Have you ever considered how accountability, or the lack thereof, impacts law enforcement? This isn't a question most of us ponder daily, but it shapes the very fabric of our society. Accountability is the cornerstone of trust, and it's this trust that forms the bedrock of any effective law enforcement agency. When officers who violate laws, policies, or ethical standards aren't held responsible for their actions, it can lead to significant issues of misconduct. In this video, we're going to explore key aspects related to the lack of accountability in policing, such as internal investigations, transparency, legal immunity, resistance to oversight, prosecutorial discretion, disciplinary action, political pressures, and record-keeping. Each of these elements plays a significant role in either fostering accountability or contributing to its absence. As we delve deeper into this issue, it's crucial to remember the profound impact lack of accountability can have on society. After all, a society that cannot trust its protectors is one teetering on the precipice of chaos. Let's start with internal investigations, a critical but often controversial aspect of policing. When allegations of misconduct arise, many police departments opt to handle these claims internally. This means that officers within the same department are tasked with investigating their colleagues, which can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, these officers have inside knowledge of departmental procedures, making them well-equipped to uncover any breaches. However, this familiarity can also breed bias, whether intentional or not, potentially leading to skewed outcomes. This lack of independence can result in the protection of officers over the pursuit of justice. The public is not blind to these potential pitfalls. If internal investigations are perceived as lacking transparency, it can erode public trust, further driving a wedge between law enforcement and the communities they serve. So the question becomes, are internal investigations enough, or do we need more external oversight? Transparency and legal immunity are two interrelated aspects that significantly influence accountability. When we talk about transparency, we're referring to the clear, accountable, and honest handling of processes. In the context of law enforcement, it's all about how misconduct allegations are investigated and shared with the public. If there's a lack of transparency, this can erode public trust and fuel suspicions about the fairness of investigations. Now let's move on to legal immunity. This term refers to the protection given to certain government officials, which can include police officers. Specifically, we're talking about qualified immunity, a legal doctrine that shields these officials from being held personally liable for actions taken while performing their duties. While it serves to protect officers from frivolous lawsuits, critics argue that it also creates a significant barrier to accountability. It makes it tough for citizens to seek legal recourse when they've been wronged. These aspects highlight the need for legal reforms and greater transparency in law enforcement. Scene script. Resistance to oversight and prosecutorial discretion are two facets of law enforcement that can significantly affect accountability. Let's start by looking at resistance to oversight. In an ideal world, law enforcement agencies would be subject to rigorous external monitoring. However, in reality, this is not always the case. Police unions and other entities often resist outside scrutiny. This resistance can take numerous forms, from lobbying against legislation that would increase transparency to challenging the authority of oversight bodies. The result? A significant obstacle to independent investigations, which are crucial to unearthing and addressing allegations of misconduct. Now, shifting gears, let's consider prosecutorial discretion. Prosecutors wield considerable power in the criminal justice system. They decide whether to bring charges against officers accused of misconduct. This power, however, can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, prosecutorial discretion allows for the consideration of context and nuance in individual cases. On the other hand, it can create a sense of impunity if prosecutors are reluctant to charge police officers or if there are conflicts of interest. For instance, a prosecutor might hesitate to bring charges against an officer due to the close working relationship between police departments and prosecutors' offices. Or a prosecutor might face political pressure to be tough on crime, which could discourage them from pursuing cases against law enforcement officers. This lack of willingness to prosecute can significantly compromise accountability. So what does this all mean? It means that resistance to oversight and prosecutorial discretion can create an environment where misconduct might not face the full extent of the law. This, in turn, can erode public trust, foster a culture of impunity, and hinder efforts to prevent misconduct. These factors underscore the need for systemic changes to improve accountability in policing. whether it's establishing independent oversight bodies, enacting laws to ensure transparency, or promoting a culture that values ethical conduct within law enforcement agencies. It's clear that there's much work to be done. But remember, change is possible, and it starts with understanding the issues at hand. Lastly, let's discuss 3 other aspects that can erode accountability: lack of disciplinary action, political pressures, and inadequate record-keeping. Let's dive right in. Lack of disciplinary action is a significant factor that contributes to the erosion of accountability. When misconduct is identified, the absence of appropriate disciplinary action can send a message that such behavior is tolerated. This could involve lenient punishments, or even the complete absence of consequences for officers found to have engaged in wrongdoing. In order to instill accountability, it's crucial that there are clear and consistent consequences for misconduct. Next, we have political pressures. These can heavily influence the handling of misconduct cases. Elected officials may hesitate to take strong action against law enforcement officers due to concerns about public opinion or support from police unions. This can lead to a culture of impunity, where officers feel they can act without fear of repercussions. However, we must remember that true accountability is not swayed by political winds, and that maintaining the public's trust should be paramount. Lastly, we cannot overlook the role of inadequate record-keeping. Comprehensive and accurate record-keeping is essential for tracking the history of officers involved in misconduct. If there are gaps or deficiencies in these systems, it can impede efforts to identify patterns of misconduct. This makes it incredibly difficult to hold officers accountable for their actions. The solution lies in improving these systems, ensuring that they are accurate, comprehensive, and accessible to those who need this information. So, why does all this matter? Because accountability is not just about punishing bad behavior, it's about fostering a culture of responsibility and ethical conduct. It's about ensuring that law enforcement officers uphold the law rather than break it. It's about rebuilding and maintaining the trust between law enforcement agencies and the communities they serve. All these aspects contribute to the lack of accountability in law enforcement, highlighting the need for systemic reforms. Accountability in law enforcement is not just about holding individuals responsible for their actions. It's about addressing systemic issues like internal investigations, transparency, legal immunity, oversight, prosecutorial discretion, disciplinary action, political pressures, and record-keeping. It's about making comprehensive reforms, fostering independence, and enhancing transparency. It's about creating a culture that values accountability and ethical conduct. And most importantly, it's about involving the community in holding law enforcement accountable and promoting positive change. It is about fostering a culture of integrity where the rule of law is upheld and public trust is maintained.